Welcome, participants, to the Virtual Island Summit session on global practices, challenges, and opportunities in energy storage for islands and small island developing states. We will, I think, give it a couple of moments so folks can join the session, and then we'll get right back to kicking off after that. In the meantime, there should be a couple of polls popping up. One related to where you consider home, so please feel free to put your answers in there, and there should be another one coming up any moment now too. And the second poll I see has popped up. So which sector best describes you? Please, if you have a moment, please answer the polls. That will help us. Okay, so we've given it a couple of moments, and I see that there are folks who have joined this session, so I think we will get started, leaving maximum time for discussion. So once again, welcome everyone to the Virtual Island Summit session on global practices, challenges, and opportunities in energy storage for islands and small island developing states. My name is Malika Nanduri-Bhatt. I am the Director General for Policy and Planning here in the Innovation and Energy Technology sector of Natural Resources Canada. This webinar will bring together governments and multilateral organizations with the aim of sharing information about programs, best practices, and lessons learned in energy storage. We have convened a panel of experts with similar but different experiences to share from different regions of the world, including the World Bank, the International Renewable Energy Agency, or IRENA, the Clean Energy for EU Islands, the Indian Ocean Commission, and CARICOM. I would like to raise, first of all, just a couple of housekeeping items before we start. So each speaker that I will introduce will have 10 minutes for their presentation. At the end of the presentations, we will have approximately 25 minutes for questions and answers. We ask that if you have a question, to please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We will do our best to address these during the Q&A portion of the session. Today's discussion extends the dialogue that took place during Canada's G7 Joint Ministerial Session on Healthy Oceans, Seas, and Resilient Communities between the Ministers of Oceans, Energy, and Environment. Ministers agreed to do two things: explore how innovation and energy technology could further help coastal communities better withstand severe weather events and transition to clean and resilient energy systems, and encourage further collaboration in accelerating the development and deployment of clean and resilient energy systems by sharing domestic and international lessons learned in deploying innovation and energy technology. So the question is, why the focus on energy storage? Well, rising global demand for energy and concerns for the environment and climate change have created an imperative to dramatically reduce the global environmental footprint of energy production and use. Clean technology and adoption are critical for reaching our shared environmental and economic goals. So this global transition to a low-carbon economy has accelerated integration of renewable energy solutions in energy ecosystems worldwide, as well as the need for innovative solutions in energy storage for diverse applications. The need for more resilient energy infrastructure in order to build back better is particularly important for island and coastal communities that are more susceptible to natural disasters and the impacts of climate change. I'm looking forward to hearing from our speakers about the innovative approaches and applications in energy storage that are being implemented. I will introduce our speakers shortly, but first, let me provide some brief context about Canada's energy storage experience and our technologies. So on the next slide, you'll see, which is titled Building Resilient Energy Systems. I'll note that while reaching our environmental and economic goals are important, renewable and clean energy technologies are also an essential part of increasing energy resiliency. Canada has both the expertise and the resources the world needs for the new economy, and a thriving ecosystem that spurs innovation and supports the integration of global clean tech value chains, including for energy storage. NRCan, or Natural Resources Canada, NRCan as we call it, plays a crucial role in this ecosystem through its policy, programming, and research and development and demonstration leadership. In terms of the landscape, the Government of Canada is contributing to the advancement of energy storage technologies in various ways, through training high-quality personnel, enabling fundamental research and new ideas. At the university level, the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council, or NSERC, supports research and innovation in natural sciences and engineering. The NRC, or the National Research Council, and Natural Resources Canada both have federal labs working to deliver research in energy storage. At NRCan, we also manage funding programs for deployment and demonstration of energy storage technologies. The Industrial Research Assistance Program and the Federal R&D Concierge Service are part of this energy storage landscape in Canada and can support companies in energy storage development. Many other government departments provide policy and funding support, facilities and expertise, procurement and testing within specific domains. Enablers also include Export Development Canada, or EDC, which provides access to foreign markets, Sustainable Development Technology Canada, SDTC, which provides project funding, as well as BDC, or the Business Development Bank of Canada, that provides financial capital. In terms of the storage value chain, which is the next slide, slide 4, Canadian companies, academic and public organizations provide innovative energy storage solutions across the value chain from materials right through to end use. Some examples of Canadian company highlights include HydroStore, which develops compressed air energy storage systems. HydroStore is a low-cost, utility-scale storage solution that is emissions-free and can be deployed at any site in proximity to a body of water and has an unlimited cycle life over 30+ years. Peak Power is another one. It also offers energy storage as a service, using big data and machine learning algorithms to manage how energy storage technologies interact with the grid. Battery energy storage, when controlled through Peak Power's intelligent software platform, provides multiple benefits to building owners, including increased resiliency, improved environmental performance, electricity bill savings, and additional revenues from participation in utility programs. Corvus Energy, for another example, deploys large-scale energy storage systems using advanced lithium-ion battery systems that are proven economical, safe, and reliable in a range of challenging maritime and transportation applications. Corvus Energy has successfully retrofitted an operational ferry in Norway with a 1 megawatt lithium-ion battery pack that replaces the main drive engines. The fully electric ferry will increase safety and reliability over incumbent technology while reducing maintenance costs of existing systems and generators. In addition, a reduction of 700,000 liters of marine diesel fuel per year will generate considerable environmental benefits, such as reducing CO2, NOx, SOx, as well as particulate matter. And finally, Enerstore Inc. is an energy storage project developer. The company develops, owns, and operates industry-leading energy storage projects in partnership with progressive stakeholders and leading technology providers. Enerstore built Canada's first commercial grid-connected flywheel facility and is developing Canada's first commercial compressed air energy storage facility. They offer commercial and industrial customer solutions to lower their energy bills and are working in partnership with Indigenous communities to reduce dependence on diesel fuel. On the next slide, I'll talk a bit more about the National Research Council and the work it does. They have a program on energy storage for grid security and modernization, which focuses on solving the greatest obstacles to adopting and using energy storage technologies, which include durability, cost, and risk associated with development and implementation of energy storage in Canada. A couple of examples under the program include, under Thrust 1, NRC and its partners are working on a project to develop the Canadian Energy Storage Roadmap to understand the market potential, technical and financial viability, and economic and environmental benefits of adopting energy storage in each jurisdiction in Canada. Other projects in this thrust develop tools to assess the costs and the value of energy storage and update codes and standards to ensure safe and economic implementation of storage. Under Thrust 2, NRC is working on a project with the International Energy Agency member countries to develop generic open source models and data sets for various energy storage applications, including both grid-connected, microgrid, and remote areas. Other projects in this thrust focus on developing procurement and operational guidelines, monitoring operating storage projects, and testing energy storage components before being deployed into the field. And finally, under Thrust 3, projects focus on the development of the materials and devices for energy storage with Canadian companies across the supply chain, including those for lithium-ion, solid-state, as well as flow batteries. Partner companies are leveraging Canada's experience in clean tech and our strong natural resource base to develop storage technologies for the global market. On the next slide, slide 6. The Government of Canada has supported 29 projects across the country that are demonstrating the use of various storage technologies. Two examples I want to mention here. First, the Raglan 2 project, which was developed by Tuglik Energy, is a remote northern microgrid that uses renewables, large wind turbines specifically, and various types of storage in conjunction with diesel. The project enables a significant reduction in diesel use and has been pushing the boundaries in terms of integration of renewables with storage into a diesel system. A key difference for SIDS is that the Tuglik system has a significant heating load that has to be managed, and the energy needs would be somewhat different. Nonetheless, it has enabled a 40% renewable penetration at a northern mine and makes use of storage by flywheel, battery, and hydrogen. The second example, the Gull Bay First Nation microgrid, is an Indigenous-led project that utilizes ground-mounted solar panels, lithium-ion batteries, and a sophisticated control system to help the community offset its diesel usage. The controller balances generation and energy storage to reduce diesel use for electricity production by as much as 30%. On slide 7, led by Canada's Ryerson University, the NSERC Energy Storage Technology Network will help to drive progress in energy storage in Canada by collaborating across sectors to develop, test, demonstrate, and commercialize new technologies. NSERC, as I mentioned before, is the National Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada. The idea here is to develop next-generation energy storage technologies and products for Canadian and international utility markets. The program has a budget of about $8.5 million over a 4-year period. The network spans across 4 themes: storage technologies, power converters, system integration, as well as economics and policy. Members include 15 different universities, 26 sponsors, 27 professors, and 24 projects to date. And with that, I think I will move to introducing today's speakers. So we have a very, very esteemed panel assembled today. We are pleased to have speakers from G7 as well as CIS countries, including Dr. Fernando de Cistern, an energy specialist for the World Bank. He will be speaking about the World Bank Energy Storage Partnership. Dr. de Cistern brings experience in strategic energy planning, energy security, regional market integration, and renewable energy grid integration. Dr. Paul Durant, IRENA's lead in renewable energy innovation, strategy, and engagement, will also be one of our speakers. With over 20 years of experience in shaping international innovation policies and programs, Dr. Durant will be speaking about IRENA's SIDS Lighthouse Initiative. Next, we will have Mr. Jev Jensen, Project Coordinator for Clean Energy for European Union Islands. He brings experience in strengthening local climate action in the EU for over 10 years. After that, Mr. Shaban Dabidin, representing the Indian Ocean Commission, will be speaking. Mr. Dabidin is Transmission and Distribution Manager for the Central Electricity Board in Mauritius. And finally, Dr. Devin Gardner, head of CARICOM's Energy Unit. Dr. Gardner is responsible for policies and strategies for transforming the energy sector within the Caribbean community. Finally, I would like to offer our sincere thank you to our speakers for agreeing to participate in today's virtual panel, which I think will be an excellent session. Without further ado, I will pass the microphone over to Dr. Fernando de Systen, who will start things off.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Malika, and thanks to Natural Resources Canada for the invitation. It is a pleasure to present today at this Virtual Island Summit. My name is Fernando de Systen, and I'm an energy specialist at the World Bank here in Washington, D.C. My colleague Sandra Chavez, renewable energy consultant, is also joining us today. We both are part of the team working on the World Bank's energy storage program and the energy storage partnership that I will be presenting today, and that the World Bank is convening to accelerate sustainable storage deployment in developing countries. So first of all, let me tell you a little bit about the World Bank's Energy Sector Management Assistance Program, or ESMAP. This is where we both work within the World Bank and where this program has grown. ESMAP is a partnership with other 18 partners, mostly country governments and some philanthropies, to help reduce poverty through sustainable energy solutions. It is constituted as a multi-donor trust fund at the World Bank, dedicated to providing technical assistance and global knowledge products on a number of energy-related topics, such as energy access, renewable energy, energy efficiency, subsidy reform, governance, markets and planning, and also data, with cross-cutting work on small island developing states. The main activities supported by ESMAP include informing development financing. These are World Bank investment operations, informing policy, providing strategic advice to governments and increasing client capacity, and also developing global knowledge products and innovative solutions to tackle the most pressing energy challenges. So as many of you may know, the World Bank has been supporting the energy sector in developing countries and in small island developing states in particular for many decades, including providing financial support for investments in batteries associated with mini-grids, among many other types of investments. But it is at this point that we feel that energy storage could be a truly game changer for developing countries in order to address the dual challenge of bridging the access gap and decarbonizing the economy. The access problem has been improving steadily, but as of today, there are still around 800 million people with no access to electricity, and renewable capacity investments need to increase by 6 by 2030 if we want to meet the 7th Sustainable Development Goal of ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. This is a goal for which we all have to join efforts, and it is not a coincidence that one of the channels established in SDG 7 to accomplish this goal is to enhance international cooperation, which is something that the bank has been doing for many years. Just to give you some context about island states, I will say that supplying the energy needs of developing countries is oftentimes quite difficult, but operating in island states has a number of additional challenges that makes it even harder. To begin with, island states typically have a strong reliance on imported fuel supply. Often there is no connectivity with the mainland, let alone with regional grids. There isn't enough flexibility to accommodate the variability of renewables. Usually projects come with a higher price tag because of the extra cost of transporting the equipment to remote locations. There is a higher exposure to weather and climatic events, which makes it important for islands to build in resilience in their planning. And there are very limited options for supplying firm power. And it is on this last point where I would like to spend a moment, as firm power is to a large extent responsible of the bank's motivation for focusing now on energy storage. The motivation comes very much from our experience and our dialogue with governments and dispatch centers in our countries. As demand grows rapidly and we work with governments to bridge the access gap, we need to support them providing firm capacity solutions. And firm capacity means that the capacity is available 24/7. Which is particularly difficult when it comes to meeting peak demand. Unfortunately, the resources available in many of our countries, and in particular in island locations, are very limited, or they might take many years to develop, as it is the case of hydro, or there are substantial barriers to unlock some of them, as it might happen with energy imports. So these factors create a situation where the preferred solutions by many of these countries is to quickly provide firm capacity with liquid fuel-based generation, like HFO and diesel. These fossil fuel solutions bring in turn a lot of problems, not just environmental, but also geopolitical in terms of higher dependence from other countries for fuel supply, macroeconomic with a higher exposure to oil prices, supply disruptions associated with corruption, and maintenance issues related to the lack of availability of adequate capacity or parts. Now, the good news is that solutions based on renewables energy storage can displace a large volume of some of these fuel being burned, and also potentially replace some of the units that are being used to provide firm capacity, increasing the number of options available. We know that storage can do many good things, but it also comes with a number of requirements. We have found that if we want to leverage the full potential of energy storage in developing countries and accelerate battery deployment, we will need to continue decreasing the cost of battery technologies. Remember that this is an asset that is 100% capex. We will need to use technologies that are friendly to the environment and adapted to the applications and conditions found in developing countries. We will also need to adopt policies and regulations that guarantee that batteries can be connected to the grid and that they recover their full cost. And ultimately, we will need to expand the market to developing countries. The World Bank has already financed almost 1 gigawatt hour out of the total 5 gigawatt hours currently deployed in developing countries. So we felt like we were well positioned for action. And in September 2018, the former World Bank president announced in the One Climate Summit that the World Bank Group would mobilize $5 billion to accelerate investments in battery storage. This includes support the adoption of policies and regulation, diversify to more environmentally sustainable technologies, support firm power auctions for hybrid projects. These are solar PV and wind with batteries, finance large-scale pilot projects to reduce the risk of new technologies that offer better performance than mainstream technologies, particularly in terms of longer durations, support mini-grids and distributed applications, and finance standalone batteries as a grid asset. So after the announcement between November 2018 and March this year, we consulted with over 100 organizations, and they all agreed that there is a strong need for action to address important knowledge gaps around energy storage, and that these could be addressed by an energy storage partnership, ESP, which the World Bank is now convening. As a result, the ESP was announced at the Clean Energy Ministerial in Vancouver and formed as a collective effort to address knowledge and capacity gaps to scale up energy storage in developing countries, recognizing that thanks to being modular and universally deployable, energy storage might be the only practical and quick to deploy option in some of the countries where we operate, where there are no other flexibility options, and this is particularly relevant in seed locations, but also recognizing that energy storage is very capital intensive and that it requires its own regulatory framework, recognizing also that energy storage solutions in developing countries require special attributes to operate in extreme weather and low capacity conditions for maintenance. And finally, the importance of taking a technology neutral approach. So we are not just focusing on batteries, but in all types of storage, including thermal storage, hydro, and hydrogen. The work program of the partnership will increase storage knowledge through cooperation. And so far we have 35 partners joining our efforts, among which we have international organizations such as the IEA and IRENA, industry associations, national laboratories, and other development institutions. In general, the partnership will take a global public goods approach to developing energy storage solutions tailored to the needs of developing countries, which could be achieved through building capacity, increasing our understanding of emerging markets and the technical requirements for storage systems, offering opportunities for responsible innovation, developing storage products that are acceptable by society, better informing investments and policy dialogue with countries, facilitating access to country and project-specific information, increasing the opportunities for new technologies to gain visibility, and for multilateral cooperation. So where do we stand now? Well, we are currently in the process of confirming initial pledges to the investment program. I'm sure that many of you are aware of the commitment by some countries to contribute with concessional funds to energy storage in developing countries. And together with our partners and some country clients, we have initiated an R&D and capacity building program on warranties and safety, promising technologies with pilots and testbeds, testing protocols, technology and system modeling, mini-grids, regulation, and recycling. And I will just say that we are very excited about this partnership, the support that it is receiving, and the work that is being done. And I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a really interesting presentation. And I just want to note before we go on to the next speaker that we are holding, sorting through questions we're getting. We're going to hold them till the end. We would like all the speakers to go first, so we'll save them for the Q&A session. And just for folks, so folks are aware, we have really, really great participation. We should keep that going. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Dr. Durant.
Hello, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be able to join you today. Just looking at the chat, amazing how many people are attending from so many different places around the world. It's great to be able to talk to you. So my name is Paul Durant. I lead on innovation for the International Renewable Energy Agency. So here at IRENA, our role is to support our 160 member countries in maximizing the use of renewable resources. In our recent Global Energy Transformation Roadmap to 2050, we demonstrate clearly that we're not on track to deliver on the Paris Agreement. However, together, renewable energy, deep electrification of the end-use sectors, and robust action on energy efficiency can or could deliver up to 90% of the emission reductions we need. Now, fortunately, the business case for renewables is getting stronger and stronger. In most parts of the world today, renewables have become the lowest cost source of new power generation. By 2020, most newly commissioned wind and solar projects will provide cheaper electricity than any of the other fossil fuel options, and crucially, without subsidies. IRENA has the pleasure of working with island nations around the world. Islands are often at the forefront of climate change. They're already experiencing the effects of climate change, particularly vulnerable to future effects, but also leading the charge in terms of tackling climate change and adopting new technologies such as renewables. So let me start by briefly describing some of our work specifically with islands and small island developing states, and then I'll move on to talk about some of our analysis of energy storage. In 2014, IRENA established a partnership with small island developing states called the SIDS Lighthouse Initiative. This was launched in September 2014 and then refreshed in September 2018. Now, the objective of the initiative is to enable sustainable energy transformation for people living on the front line of climate change on small islands around the world. By doing that, we hope to enhance energy independence and enhance economic prosperity on the SIDS. You see on the screen there the 36 SIDS participants and listed at the bottom 24 other partner organizations who are working collaboratively on this initiative. Now we've seen, since 2014, we've seen a dramatic shift in the use of renewables. Looking at those 36 SIDS partners, the installed renewable capacity reached 2.9 gigawatts by 2018. 660 megawatts was installed in the 4 years between 2014 and 2018, and over $1.5 billion US has been mobilized for renewable energy investment. Progress was so good that the original targets for 2020 were exceeded several years early. However, whilst we've been making great progress, there is still plenty more to do, a substantial amount more that could be done. The renewable energy potential in SIDS remains largely untapped. To give you a flavour of that, average electricity prices in SIDS are still the highest in the world, which has negative impacts on electricity access and hinders socioeconomic development. Recognising this, the participants in the Lighthouse Initiative and IRENA undertook an extensive consultation exercise with all of our partners to determine ways forward. That established a new phase of the Lighthouse Initiative, which was launched at the UN General Assembly in 2018, and put specific emphasis on supporting SIDS in the implementation of their nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. Now, I don't have time to go into all the detail of the different areas that we prioritise, but let me pick out a few key points, perhaps relevant to the storage discussion shortly. We are seeing good progress in the power sector, but many SIDS remain heavily reliant on imported oil, especially for the transport sector. That has consequences for SIDS economies, which are particularly vulnerable to oil price volatility. Access to finance is a major issue. In order to meet the renewable energy targets set out in those nationally determined contributions, We estimate about $16 billion will be needed to 2030. These activities, the activities under the SIDS Lighthouse, all have the aim to boost renewable power deployment, and the target of 5 gigawatts by 2023, which we're on track to meet, but substantial effort is still needed. So there's a host of activities going on. Again, this is just giving you a flavor, so I'm not getting into detail, but to give you a sense, there's an established knowledge hub of best practice and expertise drawing on experience in the islands, standardized approaches to project development, standardized contracts, advice on access to finance, a repository of knowledge. A lot of work on creating awareness, both of the challenges and of the success stories where people are deploying things. Capacity building is at the heart of this, with workshops and other events that help raise understanding and increase expertise. Crucial to be working with lots of partners on this, and it's a pleasure to be working with many other organisations bringing this together. Outreach to key decision makers, and then for IRENA specific activities, we continue our renewable readiness assessments, where we work with countries to help them understand what the potential renewable in their region is, and what the actions are that are necessary to help them unlock that. And then on the more technical side, a variety of activities, which includes grid integration studies, looking at the specifics of how renewables could be integrated into a particular grid and what some of the technical challenges there, and a host of countries that we've done that with. So that's the SIDS Lighthouse Initiative in a rather hurried overview. Turning now to look at specifically at storage, which is an important element of what we're trying to achieve. So as I highlighted earlier, renewable costs have fallen. It's now a cost-effective choice, particularly in islands, where, as we heard earlier, the alternative fossil fuel options are often very expensive. But as we know, the key renewables, solar and wind, are variable. So as variable renewables grow to substantial levels in electricity systems, we require greater flexibility in the system as a whole in order to deal with that variability. Now, in large interconnected energy systems, there are a range of options to create that flexibility. And we put a lot of work in IRENA to understanding those options and help countries maximize their flexibility. It includes sort of diversity of resources, interconnection with neighbors, and smart management of demand in a variety of different ways. However, in smaller isolated systems, such as islands, those options exist, but are perhaps more limited or more difficult to implement, and energy storage is therefore crucially more important. We've seen energy storage starting to play an increasingly important role, and we see it set to grow exponentially between now and 2030. We've been looking closely at the progress that's been made and the potential of energy storage in various forms. We've built a detailed information on the current and projected costs of storage and explored how storage can be integrated into power systems. In 2017, so our most recent published report on the costs, we estimated that the total installed cost of a lithium-ion battery could fall by an additional 50 to 60% by 2030. We also estimated that other storage technologies could see substantial large cost reductions over the same time. And during that time, we expected the electricity storage market to grow by 2 to 3 times, and the battery storage market to grow from somewhere between 17 and 38 times by 2030. Now that was 2017, but just 2 years later, we see remarkable progress on cost, on the range of technologies that are coming through, on the increase in deployment. And those numbers look conservative right now. We're taking a look at them again and we'll be refreshing them, but we're impressed by the progress that we're being made. That said, there is still substantially more that needs to be done, particularly in terms of innovative approaches to not just generating storage options, but to crucially getting those storage options deployed. That's where another large part of our work comes in. So to highlight a few examples, we have been looking around the world at innovative solutions for integrating renewable energy. And earlier this year, we published a major report where we looked at innovative solutions for a renewable powered future. We identified 30 different innovation types, which are examples from around the world. 6 of those are particularly relevant to storage, and it's interesting to note the variety of applications in which storage can be deployed. To give you a flavor of that, let's start at the large end. grid scale applications. These are large storage solutions connected and managed as part of the grid, often by a utility or by the distributed system operator. That's a very established part of the energy system in the form of pumped hydro storage, but increasingly we're seeing other technologies, batteries and other large-scale solutions coming through and being deployed. At the other end of the scale, and indeed the other end of the grid, if you like, we're seeing smaller scale solutions for behind the meter applications. Those applications are where individual households or individual businesses want to make maximum use of the renewables that they're generating and install batteries. Here in Germany, where I'm based, that is a substantial market now and growing, and we're starting to see it emerge in other places around the world. Transport is a crucial element of the storage story. It's said to be particularly important. In our recent Innovation Outlook report on smart charging of electric vehicles, we showed how batteries in electric vehicles are likely to dwarf the stationary battery storage capacity. We're projecting 14 terawatt hours of mobile battery storage in the form of electric vehicles versus 9 terawatt hours of stationary battery storage by 2050. I think that's important in the island context, where there's substantial potential for electric vehicles, potentially bringing threefold benefits. Firstly, decarbonising transport, as long as the electricity is clean. Secondly, reducing that reliance on imported oil, as we've heard, which is expensive and exposes the economies to price volatility. And lastly, the storage in those vehicles can provide a source of flexibility to help people make more use of renewable energy. A key point there, however, and this is important in the early stages of planning, is to make sure that the deployment of electric vehicles and crucially the charging infrastructure is smart. So the charging infrastructure is able to adjust and be controlled centrally in ways that allow that flexibility. Another point I just want to briefly emphasize from this slide, which we're seeing across a host of innovations, but again, is particularly relevant to energy storage, is that the innovation is not just limited to technology. It's not technology in isolation. Successful solutions that we're seeing emerge are those where the technology is combined with innovative business models, with changes in the way in which the market is designed, and changes in the way in which the system operates. And it's innovations across those four dimensions that create viable solutions that people can actually use that are tailored to national applications. We are seeing some great examples of that emerging, and we expect many more. We've got a host of other reports online about the cost report on energy storage valuation, role of energy storage in energy systems, online tools that help people understand the valuation, the value that energy storage can bring in their system. Do check those out if you're of interest. Lastly, let me just finish very briefly, and I think I'm slightly over time, so I'll run through this quickly and you'll get to see these slides later, no doubt. A few examples of applications in islands. Now, these examples came from that 2017 report, and we had some more. We've seen quite a few more since then, but there still needs to be, there's still plenty of scope for more. It's interesting the variety of different ways in which storage is being used. So in Graciosa, the second smallest island in the Azores, with a large lithium-ion battery paired with wind and solar. That at the time, it was ensured that 2/3 of the island's electricity requirements were met reliably by renewable energy, significant savings compared to the diesel fuel alternative, and it also provided ancillary services to the grid in terms of voltage and frequency control. In Hawaii, another application there where they were seeing substantial curtailment of their solar PV plant, the use of the battery ensured less curtailment there, whilst also providing those ancillary services. And then another interesting example in Japan, where sodium sulfide battery was providing the large and slow balancing of the system, paired with a lithium-ion battery that was more responsive, that could provide, absorb those rapid small fluctuations. It's just a flavor of what we're seeing out there. There are some really exciting examples emerging. Countries who have these challenges can really learn from those examples, and at IRENA we're trying to ensure that that knowledge is spread. Thank you so much for your attention. My contact details and the website is up on the screen now. I'm looking forward to the rest of the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. And just a reminder to folks on the line here, please make sure that you ask any questions that you have under the Q&A banner, not in the chat. We just don't want anybody's questions to get lost in the mix. So with that, we're on a roll. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Jensen next.
Hello, everybody. I'll just share my screen, 2 seconds. And I hope that you can all now see my screen. I'm very pleased to be here. Also, thank you to you, Ms. Nandor, and so the National Resource Institute of Canada. I represent the Clean Energy for EU Island Secretariat, which is a new initiative that has been started under the Clean Energy Package for the European Union. I can see on the participants list that we are far broader than the EU today, which is great, because obviously there's a lot of good examples out there, and we, as the Secretariat, are very interested in hearing from also examples outside of the EU. I will briefly just explain a little bit about what the Secretariat's function is as a sort of a neutral platform for both when it comes to technologies and when it comes to sort of organizations to meet. And then afterwards give a couple of sort of, let's call it sort of low-tech inputs of the experiences we have received from islands that we are working with. And I hope that this will work. Technology, let's see. Basically, sort of in very short, what the Clean Energy for EU Islands Secretariat is doing is to facilitate the clean energy transition on EU islands from a bottom and up. And we do that with a very strong focus on what technically can be called sort of the quadruple helix, with the collaboration between citizens, academia, local authorities, and businesses. And this is based on the fact that we have from within the EU a series of initiatives that have shown sort of the power of engaging sort of the local authorities, as well as the citizens and the educational institutes and research institutes, as well as the local businesses, in order to anchor the transition. Because the clean energy transition can be there are various solutions, and we've seen a lot of great solutions already. But we have also seen from some examples that it can be very difficult to adopt many of these technologies within the local communities within the islands. Often because we see that technologies they're physical. They change our environment. And often they are done without sort of with the consent from, let's say, the neighbors. Often we have experience of several islands, particularly in Southern Europe, and you would also experience that in the Caribbean and on many other islands, that the main asset on the island for business is the tourist industry, and the tourist industry is often very focused on the island scenery, which is amazing, and renewable energy sources, as well as often sort of storage facilities, can change the scenery. And as it is a business model, obviously we are very often inclined to sort of protect a good business model, and therefore we have realized that it's very important to include the local community in the development of decarbonizing the islands. So you can see what in these two figures here we are trying sort of it's very with very few words that we have been trying to sort of describe how we are developing a methodological framework to engage the local communities together with the local authorities, institutions, sort of educational institutions and local businesses, to put together a common vision that, that can lead to sort of solid decarbonization plans, as well as financing concept to actually realizing these. And obviously that's something that that sort of needs a push, and that's why the secretariat here has been set up last year. We are currently sort of in the process of publishing our first experiences with the clean energy transition agenda as a very practical guidebook on how other islands can do this. I have to say that to get the snowball rolling, we are collaborating with 26 islands within the EU to get both to get the good examples of how to start the transition on islands, as well as to get feedback on how to what elements are we to highlight to strengthen the guidance towards other islands. So it's important to say that even though we are called Clean Energy for EU Islands, all the material and all the experience that we are gathering here is obviously hopefully sort of consolidating this methodology that can be used anywhere in the world. And we'll be very happy to get sort of good to get the good examples from beyond the EU, of course, as well as sharing the other way. And I mean, one thing is this focus on the clean energy transition, but we are also well aware that islands, in particular small islands, would need strong support from either the mainland or the neighboring large island, or educational institutes, academia elsewhere, or as well as island networks, etc., etc. So at the same time, we're trying to pool all relevant stakeholders into our community, primarily with an online community tool, so that the distance between the island transition teams, as we call them, that have taken sort of the commitment to decarbonize their island, and both the technology providers as well as the research institutes that might have the important knowledge will be closer. So that we hopefully can get good backing to those to the islands in need to push forward the transition. Sort of coming back to the subject, the examples I have here are low tech, and it's examples that we have sort of that has surfaced throughout our work. Obviously, some of these examples have been there for long. But it's somehow examples we have seen triggering thoughts elsewhere than just within our office, and therefore I'd like to highlight them here. In the beginning, we discussed a bit. We heard examples of technologies to sort of shave the peaks of the peak loads of consumption. We have experience in the EU of islands that are having an increase of 5,000% of usage, sort of a fluctuation of 5,000% depending on the season. If you can imagine a highly populated tourist destination in the summer, and then obviously sort of it might look a little different in the winter season, and a way to sort of shave off the peak is not necessarily, I know that it might sort of provoke a bit in terms of our theme here, but a storage facility is not necessarily always the solution. If you see on the island of Lanzarote, for instance, with 145,000 inhabitants, they are without sweet water, access to fresh water, so they have a huge energy consumption related to desalination. And here they can use the desalination plant to shave off the peaks, meaning that when their renewable sources with their wind farms and their PVs are producing an excess of electricity, they can desalinate and fill up their tanks. Whereas in sort of when the production is low, they will then be able to sort of were able to switch off some of their desalination plants, so that they can avoid the largest peaks and sort of cut off the highest point of their consumption. At the same time, we have there is quite a lot of talks actually about hydro pump storage. We have here examples from these two pictures are small graphical elements from the Greek island of Sifnos, and an island of, I think, approximately 2,500 inhabitants that are right now that are developing and sort of in the planning process of looking into how seawater can be used as a to be pumped into reservoirs and then released into turbines when the renewables renewable electricity is low. It's here you can see it's renderings here, and obviously these are new technologies, and there's a lot of things that need to be taken into considerations when deploying this. There are other examples also, I believe, in Japan, where they have been experimenting with this. So it's very cutting edge technology that they are looking into for the moment. On the islands of Åland in the Baltic Sea, they're also right now in a planning phase, or sort of in the development phase of a pump storage system, but using old mines, so that you see here that renewable energy is pumping fresh water from mine shafts up into an upper reservoir that can then be released when the renewable sources are when the wind is not blowing or the sun is not shining. So the same thing, we have also examples from Miliero, Spanish island, and we see sort of small examples popping up here and there. And it's interesting to see how sort of the different contexts provide different opportunities when it comes to storage. One of the the big questions that the islands we are working with are also the decision sort of to go for interconnection or to go for storage systems. We have here the picture on the left is the coast of out of Visby in Gotland, in Sweden, where they're right now debating, because very many of the islands, both the islands we are working with and many other islands in the EU, have the potentials to sort of be net exporter of energy. And that is something that previously not has been taken into consideration when they have been interconnected. This is, for instance, the case in Gotland, where they have their connection, their submarine cables to the mainland have not been designed to actually export the electricity. So currently, Gotland is in a process where they are looking into whether they should go for storage facilities or whether they should upgrade interconnections. And obviously, that's a debate that involves a lot of different stakeholders with a lot of different ownerships in, which is something that is interesting to sort of both follow and be involved in here from the Secretariat, but also gather their knowledge in the different angles of this discussion. The same is the case from the little island above Sicily, Salina, which we are also working with. They are right now looking into sort of exploring the ocean energy, and for that as well, they can see there are big renewable energy sources, opportunities and potentials right outside of the coast of Salina, but it does require either the discussion between sort of storage and interconnection. Obviously, it's not only an either or, but it's sort of the new technologies are somehow causing this debate and on how to basically handle the very often excess amounts of energy that we see on the islands. Apart from that, sort of, we saw very large scale battery battery storage example, which are amazing, and I'm looking forward also to connect to the other speakers for further details. Here, I would like to just present a tiny system based on energy storage. As you can see here, this is a small picture of the marina of Samsø, the Danish island, sort of in the middle of Denmark with approximately 3,700 inhabitants. Their marina is now, due to the SMILE project, which I can also recommend you to look into, is now powered by, you might be able to see this tank. If you can see my cursor, you might be able to see the little Lego bricks that are orange, indicating the bad battery packs. So these battery packs are basically powered by solar panels. You can see they're blue Lego bricks that feeds the battery, the storage facility, and provide electricity to all the boats that are coming in during the summer as well as in the low season. So this is basically to a large extent, it's almost like a closed system. However, it is connected though, but it enables to sort of give a good example of what a completely sort of closed system with renewables and battery storage can look like. What is interesting here is also the fact that if you enter this marina with a boat, you would very often need to charge the batteries in your boat, and you plug in and register as part of the renting the space for the night. But you also provide your telephone number as part of standard registration to the harbor master. This telephone number will then receive a message in case of high production of renewables from the solar panels, and the boat owners will then be instructed to either switch on or switch off the electricity to their boats. And this is sort of notched by by the pricing of the electricity in that way, to sort of notch the users to shave off the peaks. Similar things with smaller battery systems has all been installed on the small island of Tilos in Greece. But I think somehow I will stop here, and then I hope to get more questions from you, and I hope to connect with as many of you as possible. And I hope that I also sort of provided a little bit of a different angle than many of the colleagues here in the panel. Last but not least, I would of course take the opportunity to make a commercial, because our 4th Clean Energy for EU Island Forum will take place in Split and Var from the 20th to 22nd of November, where several island stakeholders, both local authorities, energy cooperatives, island development groups, etc., are meeting to share experiences on how to push forward the decarbonization on EU islands and beyond, of course. And I think that's it from my side.
Thank you very much. I think you did indeed give a different perspective. I think that's going to add to the discussion. We will move on to the next speaker. I'd just like to kindly ask speakers to keep to their 10 minutes as they've been doing, so that we can leave some time for Q's and A's. And with that moderator note, I will turn it over to Mr. de Bieden, please.
Right. Hi, my name is Chavan de Bieden. I am from the Central Electricity Board, Mauritius, the National Electricity Utility. So my There we go. So this is my outline of my presentation. So I will explain to you the Mauritian power systems first, how the load profile and the energy mix are, and the impact of variable renewable energy integration, problem you're having with it, stability of the grid, and how the battery energy storage systems come into play to solve the problem. And also the technical objectives of the BESS, the battery energy storage system, and all the requirements, the salient features of the BESS, the battery energy storage system. So quick facts and figures of Mauritius. So Mauritius is an island in the Indian Ocean, and we have a population of 1.3 million. We're a small island, but yet we are very big in terms of sea. So we are as big as the US in terms of sea, but our land is very small. So this is where we are. So this is a model of the power system in Mauritius. We have the transmission line, which is a 66 kV line, and then the distribution line is 22 kV, the medium voltage, and the low voltage obviously is 230 volt single phase and 415 volt three phase. We have a customer base of 469,000 customers. Electricity supply 24/7. We have been 100% electrified since 1982. This is a transmission network of Mauritius. This is an island, and all the network is interconnected. The whole island is completely electrified. So the distribution system is divided into three areas: area north, area center, and area south. It is commercially done for ease of customer access. So we have, as I said, 469,000 customers. We have a radial configuration of our network. We have an ABIS for the air braking hardening system. We have all in all about 10,000 kilometers of network. So this is a generation mix. In Mauritius, we have a peak demand right now of 491.7 megawatt. Installed capacity for the CEB generation, we have 480 megawatt of fuel oil thermal power plants. We have 60 megawatt of hydropower station. And we have IPP, independent power producer, that produce around 200 megawatt using coal and bagasse. Bagasse is a biomass, which is a byproduct of sugarcane, which is burned in boiler to produce electricity. Regarding variable renewable energy, we have 45 megawatt of solar PV already installed, and we have in the pipeline around 150 megawatt to be installed in the near future. We have also landfill gas, and we have a wind farm of 9.35 megawatt, and another one coming of 30 megawatt. This is our load profile, as can be seen here. I've taken December 2018, which is a summer months in Mauritius. We have three peaks actually. We have a day peak around 10:30 to 11 a.m. We have an afternoon peak at 2 p.m. and an evening peak at 7 p.m. at night. So as can be seen here, this is during the summer. We have a lot of air conditioning load from 9 a.m. to 4:30 to 5 p.m. And then we have this evening peak at night. And during winter, you can see that during the day peak, right, it's lower than it is in summer. So because there's less air conditioning load. Typically, this is how we dispatch the load. We have contractual obligation with IPPs, so they produce on the base load. And the CEB generation, that is the utility generation, we do base, semi-base, and peaking. So this is done for a merit order. So this is a long-term renewable energy share. So as can be seen here, we have renewable energy. We intend to have 35% of renewable energy by 2025. And amongst this 35%, there will be around 12% which is variable renewable energy sources. And this is where the problem arises, and this is where we need the battery. So we have firm generation capacity to be added in the future. We have already we have put 4 times 16.5 megawatt heavy fuel in a place called Saint-Louis. We have 120, 240 megawatt of combined cycle gas turbine coming in open cycle in 2020, and to make it combined cycle in 2022. So we have another project, waste to energy, which is firm power, 20 megawatt. And also we have an 2 times 35 biomass in 2022. This is where the problem is, the variable renewable energy. So we have already around, in the pipeline, around 150 megawatt of viable renewable energy sources. So we have a lot of them, 15 megawatt PV already commissioned 2014. We have 3 times 15 that was commissioned this year. Others coming in the pipeline. So all in all, we are going to have 150 megawatt of viable renewable energy sources in our system to be integrated in our grid. So this is show the output of a typical PV in Mauritius. As can be seen, it is not a perfect parabola. It is not. There's a lot of variability. The clouds, or rains, or dark clouds, light clouds, sun, less sun. So it's not a perfect parabola. So it's variable. It's intermittent. Same thing to wind power, where it is not a lot of variability in the output. And this also will create some frequency problem. So what happened is that the highly sensitive to network disturbance, that is variable renewable energy sources, tend to affect the output, tend to affect the frequency. So the high risk of frequency instability due to volatile power output. So the VRE also displays firm power, leading to a reduction in the system inertia. So in Mauritius, our frequency is 50 hertz, set frequency. So we tend to deviate plus or minus 0.5 hertz. And we are limited, we are an insular power system. We are not connected to other countries. And we need to adhere to the range of frequencies. So as you know, when the demand is equal to supply, the frequency is 50 hertz. And when demand is greater than supply, the frequency tends to decrease. And when demand is less than supply, the frequency tends to increase. So this is how it works. It's like a beam balance. So we have to keep the frequency at 50 hertz. So our power station in Mauritius, CEB's power station, they work on droop control mode. So whenever there is a change, there is a fluctuation in frequency, the output of this power station will go up and down to correct the frequency. For example, if the frequency tends to be lower, this power station will push more power to bring the frequency to 50 hertz. Whereas the IPP are set on load control mode. When they are set on load control mode, which means that they only push the power fix. There are less changes in output. Whereas CEB, these are the utility power station, they tend to go up, down to correct frequency. Not only give supply, but they need to correct also the frequency. So this is a typical diagram that can show, this is a set frequency line here, a set frequency of 50 hertz. If there's cloud passing over Mauritius, the frequency will tend to decrease, right? And the CEB power station will react to this. The governor response, which is a primary response, will tend to bring it back to the set frequency. There's also automatic gestion control that provides secondary frequency regulation. So the challenges for renewable energy integration is that there is a problem of output, there's a problem of frequency regulation. So the solution for the variable renewable energy integration is to use more semi-based engines from the CEB, from the Central Seaboard Power Station, to provide this range that is to operate on droop control to correct frequency. Secondly, we have the automatic gestion control that help to improve the secondary frequency response. And we limit the solar farm to 15 megawatt on site. And we try to disperse renewable energy generation as far as we can. We provide also curtailment if in case, for example, at night, at 4 a.m. in the morning, when the demand is very low, if there's wind turbines doing a lot of fluctuation on our grid, so we need also to provide curtailment. And we need to have sufficient conventional power to be able to provide the system inertia to dampen the frequency excursions. And finally, we need batteries, and batteries to help the conventional power to do frequency regulation. We have also put PMUs and WAMs, so phase measurement units, and also wide area monitoring systems, wide area management systems. That gives predictability to our system. So this diagram is a very important diagram that shows the wind farms, the PV farms, and the conventional power. So as I explained, the conventional power are there to correct the frequency as well as providing the supply. So when we have this wind farm and solar power, this creates obviously changes in frequency, variation of output. But to help the conventional power, we have this battery energy storage system. These batteries help the conventional power to correct frequency. Then we have what we call a control power up. Already in Mauritius, we have put 4 megawatt battery, 2 megawatt in the north and 2 megawatt in the center of the island. And we are adding another 14 megawatt. So all in all, we are going to have 18 megawatt of lithium-ion battery on our system to correct frequency. So this is a 2 megawatt battery we have placed in a substation in the north with a battery and the power electronics and the inverters. So you can see inside the container, 20 feet container, how the battery are stacked together. And this is a control mechanism, how the battery comes in and out. So this is what we do. The battery energy storage system, lithium-ion batteries. So what happened is that when they are set, for example, at 50.02 and 49.98, when the frequency is above 50.02, the battery will be charged. And when the frequency is 49.98, the battery will discharge in the bus bar, will discharge on the grid to provide the power, to compensate, to correct the frequency. So this is a case of an island called Mayotte in the Indian Ocean. That explains in French. Here you have 2 thresholds, one on the top part and one on the bottom part. So this is an output of a 13 megawatt PV farm. So what happened is that it tried to cut peaks and fill valleys, try to bring the output within the 2 thresholds, where it is controllable, where we have a control power output. This is what the battery does. So the battery can also be used for spinning reserve. So maintaining spinning reserve on the conventional generating sets implies operating units at lower loading and lower efficiency. So the battery can help also in providing power if in case there is a shortfall in power during this. For example, you can have a breakdown during peaking, and the battery can provide this part of the spinning reserve. Same thing apply here for capacity firming.
All right, Mr. Debiden, I just want to remind you of your time. I don't want to interrupt, but if you could wrap it up quickly, that would be great. We just want to leave enough time for the next presenter.
That's right. So here again, the capacity firming or ramp rate. So the battery will charge and discharge on the power system to make sure that the frequency is kept at 50 Hertz. So the solution, I said, is a battery, compensate for reduction of inertia and support the integration of variable renewable energy sources. So we have the projects coming in. We have a 2 megawatt battery in another substation. So all in all, we have 14 megawatt battery that we are going to add on the grid the next 12 months. Contract has already been awarded. So we do mainly frequency control. Also, we can do peak shaving and voltage control, but mainly we use this battery for frequency control to integrate more variable renewable energy on our system. So conclusion, so CEB will continue its obligation, the CEB national utility, its obligation to provide affordable, secure, and reliable and quality of electricity supply. We continuously track the evolution of the national grid, optimize the existing and future power systems, and reduce our dependency on fossil fuels and adding more variable renewable energy sources on our grid, and integrate and absorb variable renewable energy sources by using 4 distinct measures, so operating CEB conventional power on group control mode, adding battery energy storage systems, putting automatic generation control, PMUs, and WAMs. This is basically what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. And then we have one last speaker. Before we go there, I just want to emphasize that, you know, we want to leave enough time for Mr. Gardner or Dr. Gardner to present his work today, his speech. So if we run out of time for the Q's and A's, I just want to note that we will collect them and we will respond separately after, so that we get back to everybody. And I'm just putting that out there because I understand that we have a hard stop at 11:30. So without further ado, I turn it over to Dr. Gardner for the last presentation.
I'm unmuted. Right, thank you very much. I am Devon Gardner, and I'm from the CARICOM Secretariat that is based in Guyana, in Georgetown, Guyana. And I would like to spend some time this morning explaining to you some of what our work is in the region on the one hand, but also to explain to you some of the work in the countries that we represent and some of the challenges that the countries face and the opportunities that they are pursuing in regards to energy storage. Let me start by giving this brief orientation in a sense. If we look at the second slide, it gives us a sense as to acreage, and as the previous colleague spoke about, the majority of that acreage being sea is covered by the Caribbean community. CARICOM, which I represent, the CARICOM Secretariat, of course, being the administrative organ that helps member states in regards to many issues of functional cooperation, including energy. We see that the Caribbean community members run from the Bahamas in the north, all the way to Belize in the west, all the way to Barbados over in the east, and then it includes in the south tip of the north tip of South America, in the south of the Caribbean, Guyana and Suriname. Interestingly, it's a diversity of different types of countries. Some are multi-island chains, some are half of an island, some are single islands, some are multiple islands, twin islands like you have in Trinidad and Tobago. And then, of course, there are the low-lying countries. And some will ask, why it is that, you know, we speak of CARICOM SIDS and say that all countries in the Caribbean, are, at least the CARICOM region, are SIDS if it is that we include Belize, Guyana, and Suriname. I typically use the example that, you know, there are islands within these countries that are not separated by water, but rather by land, because of the small concentrated populations within vast tracts of land. With, you know, there are significant land divides between the major demand centers. So you really end up with an islanded effect in many of these countries in respect to how the systems have to be configured to meet those needs. I quickly speak about some issues that we have to face that will have to be contemplated within the context of an energy system design. Climate change being the number one. It's getting hotter, rain is getting more variable in terms of what is happening in the terms of the climate. It is also more extremities in climate-related weather. As you can see here, there have been increasing trends in storms, hurricanes, floods, and such alike. Sea levels are changing. We have seen climate data that suggests that there is beach erosion and sea level rise that has happened. In fact, the estimation is around 3.5 millimeter per year of sea level rise that is happening since 1993. So that's on the one hand, we see that there is real climate issues. We see that the occurrence of natural disasters, which I pointed out before, is actually showing an increasing trend, and it is actually costing countries money. In some instances, as much as 280% of GDP is lost through single events. In the middle of that, we have seen that oil price trends have been volatile, extremely volatile, and becoming more volatile. And so this is used to contextualize the fact that the countries are seeking to transition from a state of very deep, or if you want to call it historical dependence on oil, which accounts for 91% of energy services, to more indigenous, cost-effective renewable sources against a backdrop where there is a significant climate challenge that is causing a lot of disaster-related issues that is, that is being impacted by the ability of the countries to find resources to pay for some of the climate adaptation and some of the impacts that the countries are facing from the energy situation that they have, both from the natural disaster costs as well as from some of the costs that the countries spend on importing oil, which is oftentimes very, very expensive. In terms of renewable energy options for CARICOM countries, all CARICOM countries have solar and wind resources. There are some limited ones with limited amounts of geothermal in some countries, and in some countries there are some amounts of run-of-the-river hydro. But solar and wind is the main backbone of what the countries have in terms of resources. Of course, there are the emerging options such as ocean technologies like from OTEC, SWAC, and other types of ocean resources, but those are still yet to be proven. So, as the previous speaker spoke, a large part of the exploitation and exploration that is taking place in terms of new projects in respect to renewable transition is built around solar PV. Historically, though, there has been a significant amount that has been based on hydro in our systems. If one was to look in the last decade of what the region looks like in terms of renewable energy integration, in 2012, 7.2% of the electricity produced in CARICOM was coming from renewables. In 2017, which is 2 years ago, this was over 10%, almost 11%. And the CARICOM as a region have established targets of 28% by 2022 and 47% by 2027 for renewable energy integration. Although historically we have probably as much as 70% of the renewables coming from hydro and smaller amounts from wind and solar, the view is that wind and solar will form a much larger part of the renewable energy integrated into the CARICOM region within the next 10 years as we pursue those renewable targets. Geothermal, of course, is in some of the small islands which are further from the larger demand centers, and unless there is submarine interconnection, they will not be able to take up a significant amount of the load regionally as a whole, even though in some countries they could provide as much as 80 to 90% of the energy required, the electricity required. So the issue of durability, as our colleague previously spoke about, is one which we have to contend with and deal with. This is a real example from Jamaica. This is the Blue Mountain wind farm that was established, 20 megawatt, a 35 megawatt wind farm that was established in Jamaica about 5 years ago. This shows you what the changes in the production, the output is from 1 hour to the next throughout a typical day. And you see the kind of ramp rates that we experience in a wind farm like that, where you see the steepness of the ramp rates, both up and down, and it's something that utilities have to be dealing with. So in the case of solar, that's another example that comes from a solar farm in Jamaica. This is the Content Solar Farm, which is a 20 megawatt solar farm. And you see again the kind of variability and fluctuations that the production of PV as is encountered is like in a typical day, the kind of ramp rates that we have. And therefore, when we looked at the total system in Jamaica, in fact, as an example, given the significant introduction of renewables, it's the country in the CARICOM region that has the most variable renewables integrated. At this point in time, there is almost 100 megawatts of wind in the system in Jamaica, and pretty much around almost as much as 60 megawatts of solar PV in a system which at times is peaking probably at around 680, 700 megawatts. You're really looking at a significant amount of variable renewables in the system. And although there were expectations that the system should have been able to comfortably accommodate up to 20% variable renewables without much issues. By the time we got to 15% in 2016, 2017, the utility was experiencing a significant amount of frequency issues. The previous speaker spoke a lot about, you know, some of the frequency issues and some of the systems of frequency control mechanisms that have been utilized in Mauritius. So I don't need to speak about that much, but just to say that there, you would notice here from the blue line, this frequency line, that there was, Jamaica is a 50 Hz system, and you would have noticed how the system has been pretty much experiencing under frequency from a lot of the variable renewables that exist within the system. And so Jamaica has had to integrate around 24.5 megawatts of storage. It's not yet complete, but it's in the process of happening. 23 megawatts of that is lithium-ion battery. And of course, 1.5 megawatt of that is flywheel storage in order to manage some of the under frequencies and deal with some of the variabilities which are no doubt happening in the system. So within the context of CARICOM, this is just a challenge that I want to highlight because it's something we have to deal with. And so at the Secretariat itself, one of the things we are doing is working very closely with member states to integrate the variability issues into the planning process for the energy systems, such that at the end of the day, we create energy systems across the region in which there is greater flexibility in how we can dispatch and apply our generators, and we can manage our spinning generation reserves. You know, as island systems, one of the things that we pay a lot of money for, and one of the reasons why we have a lot of issues, as the colleague spoke about earlier, is the fact that there is not just variability in supply on the renewable side, but also variability in demand, as we deal with seasonal variability from tourism and other sectors, even in terms of cruise ships, which sometimes come in and spend a day in a country, in a particular day between the hours when a cruise ship is docked in port. That could lead to significant changes in the demand during the day because of the large influx of probably 2,000-3,000 cruise ship passengers being in town, as opposed to you know, later in the day when that cruise ship would have left. And we have to be able to manage those
sorry,
things.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to note that the session's going to end in 2 minutes. So to the folks again on the line who had questions, we will get back to you after. And there's a lot of questions on the presentations. I expect they will be posted. I'm not sure about the timing, but stay tuned for that.
Okay, great, thanks. I will wrap up in the 2 minutes that I have left, or the 1.5 by now. So again, you know, we look at all the options, we look at the cost of storage relative to all the other options, and we are seeking to integrate storage into our systems. It's not a matter of if we integrate storage, it's a matter of how, because storage is a necessity for our power systems to function. We are also trying to juxtapose that against being able to predict and model and predict some of the variabilities in solar production. We already are testing some models so that can help us to figure out and manage our dispatch. We have to, of course, understand too what the potential impact of disasters are likely to be on our siting, because if we are not capable of deploying our storage mechanisms and our storage systems in sites that are suitable and in sites that are not threatened by potential disasters, that should be an issue, especially because we're not looking at only battery storage, but we are also looking at pumped hydro and other types of storage mechanisms. So we are looking at a total mix of storage. And even in the case of the battery storage, you can see that even substations and locations of utilities are not immune. Lastly, we are also looking at geothermal hydrogen production, where we can use geothermal power when it's available to produce hydrogen as a storage mechanism, so that can help to feed into some of our generation systems and even into our transport sector. So at the end of the day, this is what we think our future power system will look like, one in which there's greater flexibility with distributed storage, with centralized storage, and of course, different types of storage integrated alongside renewables, so as to give us the most optimized approach. And we see storage as a necessary input into the energy systems that we desire. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everybody here, all of our speakers who took the time out of their busy days to present today. Thank you to all the attendees. I hope it was a useful seminar. I'm really sorry we didn't get to the Q&As, but we promised to follow up. So keep watching, stay tuned. Thank you.